Evening, Mayor. Evening, Tom.
Good evening.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. Hi, Mayor.
Hi, Tom. Good evening, everyone. I'm calling to order the regular session meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Tarpon Springs on Tuesday, August 25th, 2020, 6:30 p.m. Ms. Jacobs, roll call, please.
Mayor LaHousas,
Here.
Vice Mayor Carr,
Here.
Commissioner Terrapini.
Here.
Commissioner Donovan,
Here.
Commissioner Vaticiotis.
Here.
Tonight's invocation will be given by our city attorney, following with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. Our Heavenly Father, give us the long view of our work and the world. Help us to see that it's better to fail in a cause that will ultimately succeed than to succeed in a cause that will ultimately fail. May your will be done here, and may your spirit of love be carried out above personality and for the good of the people of this community. This we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic
for which it
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
and justice for all. I'd like to remind to everyone that due to the health crisis we continue to face, the meetings will continue to be conducted by video conferencing and provide for public comments to protect the public and employees. Also, please be advised that item number 11, ordinance 2020-22, mobile food truck first reading has been deferred to September 8th, 2020, regular session. And now we go into the public comments on the items that will not going to be discussed tonight. If anyone has any comments, please state your name and your address for the record. You'll be given 4 minutes. Ms. Jacobs, have we received any emails?
No emails were received.
Mr. Jam, do we have anyone that is wishing to speak?
We do have a raised hand so far, so I'll allow them in to speak.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. This is Mike Kuskudis, 623 East Tarpon Avenue. Just a minor comment. Along Pinellas Avenue, you have the islands that are nicely landscaped. Several years ago, on the south end of the property that is now a Flagship Bank, the city built like a bump out and landscaped it, which at the time was really nice. And unfortunately, that bump out, that's landscape is neglected. I see that the city crews go in and do a nice job in maintaining the landscaping, but I think they forget to do that. Currently, it's starting to overgrow. They've got some nice crepe myrtles in there. They put some low vegetation in there, but it's all starting to overgrow, full of weeds. A lot of, whether it's transients or passerbys, throw their trash in there. We've been policing it, Mr. Cosgrove and I, because we own the property there. And I just wanted to bring it to the city's attention. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jeb, do anybody else?
No, sir, we do not have any other raised hands at this time.
Okay, thank you. We are now going to the consent agenda. Item number 1 is the attorney fees. A, Trask and Dino invoice August 11, 2020. B is Johnson and Jackson invoice 6547, 6548, and 6549. Number 2 is the fiscal year 2021 regular session meeting schedule. Number 3 is authorize city manager to execute annual DEA task force agreement. And number 4 is to extend file number 160036 CM auction service for vehicles and related equipment, Pinellas County contract number 1450225 RG. Number 5 is the award file number 2000158 NJL single source purchase of rugged machine to machine gateway integrated broadband global position systems routers, accessories, maintenance, and service. And number 6 is the award file number 200162 NAM single source purchase of Dodge original equipment manufacturer parts and service. Number 7 is to approve combined car RMS crime scene and fingerprinting agreement with Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. Any of these items that you'd like to pull? Are there any items that you'd like to pull? I hear none. Ms. Jacobs, have we received any emails on the consent agenda?
No emails were received.
Thank you. Mr. Jeb, do we have any attendees wishing to speak on these items?
If anyone would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. We do not have any raised hands at this time.
Thank you. The chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And roll call, please.
Commissioner Vaticiotis?
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr?
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas?
Yes. Next is the special consent agenda, item number 8, to approve change order number 1 to bid number 200071 BJJ West Court Street improvements. Staff report, Mr. Licouris.
Yes, well, Bob Robertson, give the report to you.
Yep, I'm here. Good evening. This is Bob Robertson. I'm Project Administration Department Director. For this item, we're requesting the board's approval of a change order to the construction contract for the West Court Street Improvements Project. The purpose of this change order is to address additional utility needs that were identified after the design was finished and the project was out to bid. These include new fire service piping, additional potable water service lines for future development, additional sanitary sewer lateral connections, and miscellaneous asphalt and concrete restoration. The value of this change order request is $47,080 and would be funded proportionately by the Water Impact Fund and the Sewer Impact Fund. And with that, I will stop for questions.
Mr. Robinson, it's good that we do that ahead of time. Do we need any irrigation lines to be installed?
No, sir, we weren't planning to put any in, and the species of plants that are going in the bulb out would not require it.
Okay. Are there any commission comments on this item? Commissioner Donovan?
Yeah, I just had a quick question for you, Mr. Robertson. Just for my own knowledge, what's the estimated completion date for the project?
I believe we have until, I want to say March is the final schedule on that, but they are way ahead of schedule.
Okay.
I think what I need to do is I need to get an update for you. I do keep the percentage updated on the spreadsheet that I send out every week, but I'll send out an update for you to give you a better estimate of the date.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other commission comments on this item? I hear none. We go into the public comments. Ms. Jacobs, have we received any emails?
No emails were received.
Okay. Mr. Jeff, do we have anyone that is wishing to speak?
Yes, sir, we do. I'll allow them in.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is Mike Kuskudis, 623 East Tarpon Avenue. As most of you know, I own property on both sides of the street. You know, in looking at the construction and seeing the progress being made, and I would agree with Mr. Robertson, they look like they're way ahead of schedule. But one of the things that actually that came to my attention, and actually walking the property and seeing the parking and stuff like that, is I think you're going to have difficulty making it a 2-lane road. Okay, you know, I can understand when you put things to paper, it may look good until you start looking at it in its operational context, because a lot of times it differs from what you thought it would be. And you know, and common sense suggests that if you're along the way and you think it's going to be a mistake, then correct the mistake. You know, I initially thought this initially was going to be a one-way heading west and not a 2-lane road. And it makes common sense to have it a one-way, because you have, within a 1-block area, you have 3 access points to alternate 19. 2 of them have lights. So it seemed that if it was a westbound direction on Court Street, anybody wanting to go back could either go left and go up Lemon Street, or take a right and go up Tarpon Avenue and have access to the light. You know, going east off of that road, whether it's taking a left or taking a right, again, 3 access points within a 1-block area doesn't make sense, since you are redesigning that road. It would make sense to, again, make it a one-way road. It's also my understanding that you're only allotted 10 feet going each direction, 10 feet heading east, 10 feet heading west as traffic. And that's, you know, I know that's minimum, but that's pretty narrow. If you've got an oversized vehicle, if you're pulling a trailer, that road could be precarious, especially when you have people backing in and out at the angled parking. So I would hope that the city gives it some consideration. I know you spent money, and it may cost a little bit more to address the issue. But again, if it's a mistake, you stop the mistake before you finish it, and while you're in construction as it is. So I guess I will say I've said my piece. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter a lot to me. Not really, but I think it makes common sense, and it's a good use of traffic access along the alternate 19 corridor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jeb, do we have anybody else that wishing to speak on this item?
If anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand. We do not have any other raised hands at this time, sir.
Okay, thank you. The commission wants to comment on this item? No comments?
Mayor, I have a question.
Sure.
How far are we in construction, Mr. Robertson? I mean, are we ready to start the bump outs? Are they done, or what's the circumstances out there?
The curbing work has already started, and overall, we're at about 45% complete on the project.
40 to 45%. So, okay. All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. The chair will entertain the motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And roll call, please.
Commissioner Vaticiotis,
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan,
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr,
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas.
Yes, thank you. Next is the addendum 1, Mears Extension Additional Service. Staff report, Mr. Licorice.
Yes, I'll have Bob Robertson start off giving you some background of what's been going on with negotiations, and then I'll take over with the big question of this whole agreement and deal. So Bob, will you go ahead and start off and let them know how we've ended up here?
Yes, sir. So again, I'm Bob Robertson, Project Administration Department Director, and this item is concerning the Mears Boulevard Extension Construction Project. going back to March of this year, the city manager, city attorney, and I had negotiated what we believe to be the final terms of an agreement, which included a single payment of $347,000 for additional work that we requested to be included in the project. That work, originally requested by staff in 2017, and we made that request to the developer's engineer, included additional turning lanes at Levis and the yard waste facilities, increased stormwater pond capacity, and additional stormwater piping that exceeded the minimum project requirements. Our intention was to bring the final agreement drafted by the city attorney to the BOC for approval after the developer had executed it prior to construction. As stated, this would have happened around the March timeframe, and maybe even sooner. But for reasons that aren't quite clear, the agreement was never signed, despite several inquiries through the city attorney's office. And recently, the developer sought to amend the amount of the funding request that we negotiated. There was some back and forth about what was owed and not owed, starting with a kind of vague request falling in the range of about $640,000 to up to $1.1 million. Then a request of $482,000. And ultimately, we landed back on the original number of $347,000, which is what you see in your backup memo. So if this payment were to be approved, it would be funded entirely from the sanitation budget, since the work would directly impact access to the new yard waste facility. And the developer has also asked for several other conditions to coincide with this payment. And for those, I'll turn it back over to the city manager to discuss those items.
Obviously, getting right to the main contention and the item that we could not negotiate as a staff, because since this project began and I got involved with it at the beginning of my being the city manager, so we're talking over 10 years ago, it has been pretty much the unanimous opinion of the board that this project doesn't get a certificate of occupancy until the road is done. We've addressed it many times over the years and some recently. The one thing that they want in this agreement is they want the ability of the building official to give them a temporary occupancy on 2 buildings in the completion of this deal. Again, that's something myself, the city attorney, cannot negotiate because we've been following the edict and the commands of many commissions in sticking with that road being finished. So before we even go forward and talk about the other things, if this board is not willing to change this position to get this deal done, and one of the important things on the deal is that they sign off that they can't come back on us for any of the money that we give them is the money, and they can't come back on us and everything else. That's what we want. But obviously what they want is the temporary certificate of occupancy on 2 buildings. And that's something that you'll have to, you would have to approve and do before we even go into any other parts of the deal, because if you're not going to agree to that, then, we've brought it to you per the developer's request, and then we'll go back to the table on the other issues.
Still, Chris, thank you. Again, 347,000, this is exactly what they want, right? This is what the agreement is for the additional work that they did for the turning lanes and the stormwater improvements?
That's what we've come to agree to.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I agree that we should pay them the $347,000 that we agree. But in regards to the request for them to give them temporary certificate of occupancy, how long is it going to take for them to finish the another 10% to complete the road? Do we know?
I believe the last estimate I heard was at least 6 weeks.
6 weeks?
At least 6 weeks. That's the last one I heard.
How long have they been working on this road? Do we know? I forgot the day that we started. It was several years ago.
Well, I mean, if you count design and everything, certainly several years. Construction started earlier this year, this calendar year.
So 6 weeks to finish. I'm not sure if that's really going to be the case, but anyway, the agreement is that, yeah, the local funding agreement that we did was, in order for them to get the final CO, the project of Mears Extension has to be complete. And I sympathize, with a developer that he has 2 buildings ready and he's going to have over 102 units that he can actually rent. But my concern is, if Mears is not completed, 102 units, we can have up to 200 cars. So that's going to be additional traffic that we're going to have on South Pinellas Avenue on the busy road that it is now. And I'm concerned that it's going to be a concern for the traffic to go to the hospital. I would not agree to give them the temporary CO that they're requesting. This is something that we already have agreed, and that's the way we already promised that to the people of Tarpon Springs for several years now. That's the way they're expecting it. They want to see the road completed before the Ikaria development start renting the apartments. So that's my position on that. Vice Mayor Carr?
I'm going to echo basically what the mayor said on this one. I don't really have a whole lot more to add. I agree with the 374,000. I think let's go ahead and write the check for that. We asked for that work to be done as a city. I think the city, as a partner with this project, that's owed to the developer. I think that's a due. But I really don't have anything else to add based on, I think the mayor hit the nail on the head on that one.
Thank you. Commissioner Terrapini?
Thank you, Mayor. Tom, in reading this letter from Mr. Schilling, this memo, in paragraph 7, he kind of makes a veiled threat. We still plan to come to an agreement, I guess not a threat, but we still plan to come to an agreement with the city as to final cost sharing, but that discussion is for another day. Can you shed some light on that?
Sure. For the past 6 months, I have told the attorney that we are not paying a dime more than what the agreement provided, except for the additional work that we had asked for, and less the credits for the fill and the storage of material at the city's landfill. And I've told him that time and time again. And so each time he sends me an email asking where we're at on that, I tell him the same thing. And so that's really what he's talking about in the letter is that we're going to eventually talk about that in the future. We're at that point right now. He came back, they made an offer. It was a very, very high offer. We told them where their analysis was inconsistent with what is, on the ground. Told them that we were willing to agree to move forward with what we had agreed to in March. But we would have certain conditions, and they agreed to those conditions. One of the things that I'm concerned about as the city attorney is avoiding litigation. And if I can get us to a point where in exchange for a couple of things that we get a general release for any future possible litigation, that was really what I was attempting to do here when the request came forward, was to make sure that we cut them off so that we don't have to worry about that in the future. Mm-hmm. I understood, and I've told them all along that we were not going to issue COs for this project until the road was complete. I've been consistent on that discussion with them from the very beginning as well. This deal, however, getting to a point where they would agree to this number, getting them to a point where they would provide us with sufficient documentation that would reflect that they have the financial resources to complete the road, give us the release, otherwise comply with the agreement that we had already entered into, that it would be probably a good swap to allow them to move in, 6 weeks or 8 weeks before they're actually have the right to under the agreement. So,
and some of the other claims, I'm assuming, for more funds are unfounded as it relates to the LFA.
Well, they're claiming that we have an obligation to pay because of unforeseen circumstances on the ground, some bad engineering, from what I understand, some recommendations that city staff made that they did not follow, and they ultimately had to pay some additional monies for the work that they did in reliance upon the engineering work that they had done. I believe the agreement is pretty clear that we don't have to pay anything more than what the agreement provides. They want to be able to get in court and make that argument that of a judge. So,
Gotcha. So I see that you have the release here in paragraph 2 of
right.
Mark's memo or Bob's memo, sorry. And my understanding from years ago with this project is that we don't have any sidewalks along this road. Is that correct? I guess that would be for Bob.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I'll let Bob pipe in.
That's correct. And the sidewalks were specifically excluded from the local funding agreement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that it was not included as far as how that was negotiated out, which that's another story. Bob, do you have an idea of cost per foot on sidewalks?
Oh, I don't have that off the top of my head, but I will tell you this. If you don't mind me jumping ahead a little bit, we are working with an engineer on the yard waste and scale house relocation project. And what I've asked them to do is include sidewalk along Mears extension as an additive alternate to that bid. So we have a vehicle to include it and have it done later. But didn't mean to derail you there, but I just wanted you to have that information.
That's right. I mean, all the sidewalks in town. Give me a ballpark.
Let's see, probably 100,000 or so for that length.
How much a foot though? I know I estimate the length at like 1,400 feet from Safford Avenue to the scale house.
I really don't have those numbers handy. I'm sorry. I can get that for you though.
I thought it was roughly like $20-something a foot based on our last bid that we had, but that's just something that comes to mind right now. I could be way off still.
I understand that they all can be different with prep work and things like that, but I mean, there's got to be a per foot cost that we could work off of. So my thinking is just, in terms of the broader negotiation of this deal, right? And trying to understand where we're at today. Do we have any diagrams of turn lanes that are proposed in this backup?
We didn't include any of that in the backup, but they are, we do have engineered drawings for those turn lanes that were to be installed.
And help me understand it if I'm looking at an aerial. They're turning off of Mears Boulevard, going both ways, eastbound and westbound into the yard waste facility, or just one turn lane?
Turn lanes from both directions.
Okay. And it's, I guess it would be a right turn in if you're heading east, and then if you're traveling west, you would have a separate turn lane you'd pull off into. The traffic would continue going west. Is that correct?
Traffic going, yes.
Okay. And then in the backup, it also says that the $347,000 includes a credit for dirt and also the storage, right?
Yes, sir.
And the credit for dirt, how much dirt are we talking?
We had 3,400 cubic yards that we were able to, in effect, sell to the contractor or the developer as part of this agreement.
Mm-hmm. Do we have an estimated value on that?
Yes, the value of that dirt plus the storage that we offered them to be able to use the land there during construction wound up being $127,000 credit.
Okay. So essentially that's on top of the 347. So I'm not too much worried with the storage value, but do you know what the value of the dirt was specifically?
Gosh, I have that per cubic yard somewhere. I don't have it off the top of my head, but if you give me a minute, I can pull that up.
Okay. So what was the, when you, somebody, Mark or Bob, I think gave reference into the, and what they said that I guess there was some back and forth, or there was a time when we thought we had reached a deal, but the developer then made different claims throughout the course of time that varied in price. Is that right? Or varied in settlement cost? One time it was $1 million. The next time it was whatever.
Well, for the longest time, there was nothing. we made the deal, got set and done, had it in their hands and never heard back from them. That went over too long a period to my satisfaction because we'd already worked the numbers out and was waiting for their signature, which they never got. And then obviously we found out down the road, however long that was, why, because they wanted to make more claims of money we owed them.
Bob, if you can find out that sidewalk estimate, I would really appreciate it. At least give me a linear foot cost, something to work off of. So my thinking is this, I objected to part of this road construction, like literally probably my first 2 months on the commission years ago. And part of that objection was to the fact that we don't have we lost the opportunity for a hard corner at Safford Avenue in the Mears Boulevard extension. And the roads don't connect from the Union Academy neighborhood with exception to Levis, or at least Gross and Lincoln don't. And it's kind of a bare bones project in terms of it's Miami curbing. It's not a real curb and we don't have sidewalks. So, I can sympathize with the developer as it relates to unforeseen costs and, things of that nature. And also having these 100 or so residents lined up to move in. And I think we all can appreciate the economic engine that this apartment complex will be. As stated in some of the backup, it's a $45 million deal. So, that said, I can appreciate the road being 90% done and trying to give them a partial CO on buildings 3 and 4. Although, I did not in this sitting take into consideration what the mayor said, which is you have that many people utilizing alternate 19 now on the other roads without the ability to use Mears Boulevard, which is truly how this project was laid out and designed. Given what the city attorney said as it relates to avoiding litigation, I too would favor that. But as far as the renegotiation of this deal, it's not $347,000. If you just use the 127 on top of that, it's 460 some thousand. So, my feeling would be if we're at a point where we need to renegotiate, or we want to renegotiate, or they need to renegotiate, I'd like to see the sidewalks included from Safford Avenue to the Scale House. So if the developer is willing to consider that, I would probably look favorable on the balance of what's proposed in this memo. Thank you.
Can I just get a clarification, Commissioner? That's just from Safford to the Scale House, not Safford to Diston?
Let's see. I guess it would be to Levis. Yeah, I'm not, ultimately, I'd like to try and make a deal here, right? I think that they've certainly done a great improvement for that area. And, I don't see, I would like to go to Diston, but maybe we can include from the Scale House to Diston in the bid that Bob proposed, for when we redo the Scale House. But 1,400 linear feet's a pretty good chunk. That's why I'm trying to get an idea of what that's worth, Commissioner.
Understood.
Our Vice Mayor. Mayor, I don't have any other comments if you'd like to move on.
Okay. Commissioner Donovan?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Pretty consistent with your statements, Mayor. I'm fine with the payment amount, but I don't want to grant any occupancy. Frankly, I don't know who told them to go ahead and offer, leasing when the road completion wasn't even within sight. So I don't have much to say on it, but a deal's a deal, and I don't want to grant them occupancy.
Thank you. Commissioner Diciotis.
Thanks, Mayor. I have some questions. City Manager LaCourse, I think you mentioned in just conversation with you that there was a reason why we brought this forward now. There was some tied to September 1st. Is that correct?
Yes, they want the occupancy to begin September 1st. Again, I'm not sure that's going to happen even if we make an agreement because the building official obviously has to be comfortable to make that thing, but they wanted it by September 1st or as soon as possible. That's why I had to get it on this meeting instead of, the next meeting, the 8th, to give a little more time for everybody to digest everything. So that was the rush, their request on the September 1st or soonest after.
Did the building official give you a better estimate from a realistic time frame of when either of the two buildings would be ready for occupancy?
All he told me was it probably wouldn't be September 1st, but it could be that week in September 1st. But there's certain things that they have to turn in until he sees those. He can't dictate a time.
I almost hate to ask. I don't know if he's on the screen or in the meeting, but exactly what is a temporary certificate of occupancy? I mean, is that based on a certificate of occupancy and it's conditioned to getting all the site amenities complete, or subject to revocation if something doesn't go right and we've got families living in there and the COs withdrawn and these families have to move out?
Kevin's on here. I flipped the screen and saw him. So Kevin, you want to answer?
Yeah, I'm here. How you doing, Mayor, Commissioners? Kevin Powell, Building Development Director. Temporary certificate of occupancy gives us the ability to grant occupancy to a building or a property that's not 100% complete, which in this case, the other buildings aren't complete. However, we have two completed buildings and they're trying to occupy those buildings. What we need from them would be our closeout documents checklist. So they would need to contact our office for the checklist is what they have to turn in. So if they started turning in everything tomorrow morning, if the board agreed with the September 1st, we would probably be looking at getting through all the documents that are needed to be turned in, and potentially within that week or so start granting occupancy of the two buildings. But it's just a way from the building code that allows the building official to grant occupancy to a structure that is safe and ready for occupancy, but the entire project is not complete. What that does for us is, as you were saying, Commissioner, once you get families in those buildings, we're really not going to push them back out of a building once they're in there. So saying that it's a temporary certificate of occupancy for those two buildings is almost realistically a certificate of occupancy for those two buildings, because we are never going to move the folks back out of those buildings once they're in, unless there is a catastrophic life altering event that can happen with the buildings. That would be really the only way at that point.
Okay. I mean, you could kind of continue on infinitum on this, from life safety, hurricanes, all this other stuff. But let me just stop there. You've answered the question. Is this contract still with ATS? Is that, we're still under the original LFS from 208, or was it reassigned to someone else? Mr. Trask, are you there?
It's not the same company. It's CRP now. That would be the entity that it would be entering into the agreement with.
They reassigned it identically to the way it was in 2008?
Yeah, we have not authorized any changes to the agreement. It's exactly the way that it was when it was signed by the city.
Okay, and is American Engineering still the engineer of record for the Mears project?
Bob's gonna have to answer that.
Yeah, I believe it's actually Sycamore who's hired American to do the roadway design work. So American is involved, but they aren't the direct report to the developer.
Okay, so the LFS allowed direct contract with American Engineering, but they hired Sycamore, and then he in turn subcontracted with American Engineering.
I think that's how it worked, but American is certainly involved.
Okay, so that's another displacement from us, not directly under contract to American Engineering is not directly under contract to them. Do we know whether Pinellas County agreed to contribute their part of the impact fees to this project? City Manager, of course.
Yes, yes, they did.
Okay, so that was $1.8 million, and our part of this contract was 1.4. So this 347 plus the credit is just a little over that $1.8 million. I assume that's what we have to as far as a total. Okay. And then in that LFS, we're hanging our hat on this phase 3 provision where until phase 3 is complete, which is the entire roadway substantially complete, they're not getting any certificate of occupancy with regard to non-commercial and to the residential, because the original LFS was for a mixed use. So I assume that's what we're doing. And this 347,000 did not come before the commission before this. Is that correct, Mr. Robertson?
That is correct.
Okay. And who created or who developed that cost estimate of 347,000? Is that direct cost or is that based on some estimate?
That's based on an engineer's estimate, using the unit costs for the project.
Okay, and that was something that perhaps American Engineering or whoever, Sycamore, ultimately provided to us. All right. And Mr. Trask, is this a take it or leave it offer, I guess, on the table? Is this you have to accept everything or nothing, or we don't know until we get back to them with something?
So I've not specifically talked to them about whether it's take it all or leave it. That's the way I assume, because those are the negotiated terms across the board. If it's not something that's acceptable to the Board of Commissioners, then we're going to go back to them and tell them what's acceptable. These were terms that we thought were reasonable, and that's how we got to this point. But ultimately, you make the decision. You give us direction to how you want us to handle it. But I think that we came to the position that this was a fair way of handling it, understanding the fact that the agreement provides that the CO is they're not entitled to that CO until they're done.
Okay. So if just procedurally, if the commission was to reject this request this evening, then the proper approach would be to move to approve, and then there'd have to be 3 votes denying it in order for that to go back to them and say, well, this didn't work. Do you want to come up with something else? Or I guess I'm trying to get a feel for how this is going to work. I'm uncomfortable with providing a temporary certificate of occupancy for the reasons why other commissioners and the mayor stated this evening. I think it would be breaking a promise to the public up to this point, regardless of the number of units that would be occupied. Although they did say it would take a couple of months to get 120 units filled, but despite that, it's a promise to the public, and I'm not willing to break that promise. Yet the 347,000 seems to be acceptable to some commissioners, although I'm not sure that myself, given what Commissioner Terrapini picked up on. That this may not be the end of their request for reimbursement as well. So what I'd like to do, and what I would, what my position is to reject the entire offer and have the city attorney go back and cross T's and dot I's with something that would work short of giving a certificate of occupancy to the 2 buildings. I'm not comfortable with approving any money thinking that they're going to come down the road. Let me ask you this, City Attorney Trask, that last, that they would not hold us to any more charges, is that yours, or is that their, did they agree to this, or is this something that you're putting onto the table that would go back to them?
So I gave the list in bullet point form to the attorney. He spoke to his client and they came back and they approved those general terms in bullet point form. So all of the items that are listed in the agenda were agreed to in general. Back to your question though, relative to how this would happen, you have a rule of procedure 2-157 that provides that you are to make all your motions in the affirmative and then vote it up or down. So that's how it would happen. If you're going to vote it down, Mark and Bob and I really need some direction from you as to what are the items that you want us to key in on to get the deal done, within whatever the next 30 days or so. So we really need some direction from you.
Okay. I'd like to have sidewalks on Mears, but I honestly I'd like to see the developer go away and let us handle any new sidewalks. I mean, I just don't want them to be lingering with this thing being held over our heads. And I'm uncomfortable with having been in these situations before. I'm uncomfortable improving anything tonight without, first of all, I think that the certificate of occupancy is a non-starter with this commission any way you turn it. I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe, but I don't think so. Secondly, it sounds like there's some, regardless of what you've provided in front of us, the letter that the developer has forwarded kind of suggests something else, and that there may be some additional attempts to recover cost. And that's the thing that's problematic to me. So I think that would be the direction I would offer. And there would have to be obviously concurrence by the commission in that regard. So let me just go this. One, I'm not supportive of extending issuing a certificate of occupancy to any of the buildings at this point. And number two, I'm not for making payment until we pin down exactly what the intentions of the developer are with any future cost to this project that they would attempt to recoup from the city. And if they want the 347, they can make that deal that they're not going to pursue any additional claims by the city. That's my simple way of looking at it, Mayor. That's all I have.
Oh, thank you. After listening to what Commissioner Vaticchio said, I think we're all on the same page, except Commissioner Terrapini, that he's looking for more information about the sidewalks. What I want is the $347,000 that I support to give them that, providing that this is going to be the final payment. But in regards to the temporary certificate, CO, I'm not in favor of giving that till Mears is completed.
Mayor, may I ask some clarification?
Yes.
City Attorney Trask, how do we do that in a motion?
So the motion would be to approve with certain conditions, or you just vote this down. And I think that us listening to what you're saying, we're going to gain a consensus as to the direction that you want. So far, I've heard it looks like no COs for sure. And as for the payment of the money, some commissioners feel that it's appropriate to pay, but we would not want to pay it until we have some agreement as to what the payment is actually for.
May I ask you, what would be the cleanest way for you as an attorney to deal with this? A partial approval or just denial and then go back?
A denial and go back.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought.
You say denial the whole thing, Mr. Trask?
Yes, because it's, that's what the general terms that were agreed to by the other attorney. If some of them not acceptable, then I don't think that it's a deal that we can consummate. So we need to start over again. But I see that we've got some direction. This may be a non-issue in 6 weeks if the road is completed, or 2 months. But we don't really want to be spinning our wheels if they're going to complete this in 6 weeks. And they want to start instead of September 1st, September 15th or October 1st. We're going to, it's a rush for nothing basically, other than a couple of weeks. So I'm hoping that they can complete it within 6 weeks, and it's basically going to be a non-issue. But I am concerned about the litigation, and I thought it was a good result that we could include a general release of any further claims with the payment of this money based upon the terms that we had talked about.
Mayor.
Yes, Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to touch on a couple things. I mean, first, I think Commissioner Terrapini brought up a good point and a good idea of how to maybe leverage some other points in the project that we want to see done. But I think it's also important to include the credits and the 347. So realistically, we're not paying them 347 on the city's portion. We're paying them 467,000 or so, or 472,000 with the dirt credit and the storage credit. So that although the credit was built in, I mean, it's still dollars out of our pocket if we needed to use that fill dirt somewhere else in the city to acquire it, et cetera. So I think that's something to include in this, that it's not just a $347,000 payment for what the city asked for improvements in the current over the original plan. I also think it's important to direct the city manager and and the attorney, both of them, that it's a full release of the claims, of any further claims and any future claims of any additional new costs. So I'm on board for that as well too. But to me, I think it would be advantageous of the commission to make some type of motion as well to say this is what we will approve, and then I think it goes back into other developers' plate to say yes or no, because at that point it could be, well, will they take this? Will they take this? Will they take that situation? But if there's an opportunity to add a sidewalk in here too, I mean, I'm not against that, but I think it's pretty creative. But I mean, it didn't seem like the rest of the board was interested in that.
Mayor? Can I
Yes,
say something?
Commissioner Terrapini, sure.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple more points and then try and give as clear a direction as I can on where I'm at. Bob, regarding the dirt and the storage, that service and that product has already been rendered, right? They already have that.
That's correct.
Right. So we've already given them 25%. That's already done, essentially, of what they're asking for. So I think, Vice Mayor, that's also important to recognize. And then regarding the turn lanes, there's no median on this road. Is that correct?
That's correct. Just painted medians.
Okay. So in terms of cost, as it relates to the turn lanes, we're talking about some street paint.
Well, and widening the road and the extra drainage required and stormwater runoff because you have more impervious. So
So the road has to be widened in that area further than what it already is. Okay. All right.
That is correct. And the stormwater goes with it.
Gotcha. I mean, you know, my thinking is this. Obviously, from the developer side, if you were to think for them, you know, it's a numbers game in terms of how quickly they can rent these times X number of units and then monthly, right? So they clearly want to make a deal, and rightfully so. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations over the years, had conversations with Mark and publicly voted to not grant any kind of modification as it relates to this deal with this developer. I mean, from the property that we sold them or the deal that went sour with the hospital that we were in with them. I mean, across the board, we have never amended, as the attorney said, we have never amended this deal. So I'm at a point where they're far enough along and it's enough of an investment to where, you know, pending it's nothing crazy like 6 weeks, and pending we're covered everywhere else as it outlines in this memo. And we get you know, not a letter note for further action, but a full release from the developer, you know, putting any kind of litigation in the rearview mirror. If we could make a deal for the sidewalks or something else that would be of value to the public, the broader public, especially this given neighborhood. I mean, if you think about it, you know, the reason I picked to Levis is because at least from Levis, you can pick up the Union Academy neighborhood and have a sidewalk, the first available crossroad, and it's also the road that the school is on. So for me, I'm at a point where I see the value in making a final deal. I tried to illustrate that the number that we're giving to them with the credit and the amount that they're asking for in terms of what we're getting for it back, I think that we're being favorable towards them with that 347 plus the 127. So if they give us approximately 1,400 feet of sidewalks, whatever side I would defer to you, Bob, on the north side of the road or the south side of the road, all things considered, you know, I'm ready to make a deal.
Commissioner Terrapini,
Yes, sir.
Tom Function answered my call, and he says $35 linear foot.
Okay, times 1,400. 3 mathematicians. Let me get my iPhone here.
49,000.
That's a bargain. We've already given you 127,000.
Are there any other comments on this item?
I do, Mayor. My feeling on the developer is he's already shown his hand. I mean, we're hearing it for the first time that there's there could be some litigation pending, but it's nothing new. At least if you've spoken to the city manager about this matter, this has been brewing for a while. And so I'd like for this person to go away. I think the ideas of sidewalks are great, but I think at this point, who knows what would happen if they start building sidewalks for us at this point. I don't think that's safe either. So I think all the ideas are good, but the matter before us are the terms that have been presented to us by the city attorney. And unless there's a majority of the commission that wants to approve both the 347,000 and the certificate of occupancy for 2 of the buildings, 120 units, and perhaps, although we're not for sure, of no further pending claims against the city. And if there's a majority against that, then I think that this offer, as the city attorney has recommended, needs to be denied. And then the city attorney can take all the discussion that he's heard tonight and go back, including Commissioner Terrapini's discussion on sidewalks and things like that, and come back to us with a round 2 on this thing. But I don't know that we can just modify our motion to start wheeling and dealing through publicly through these motions that we're sending back to the developer. My experience is when our city attorney makes representations that this is what they said, I don't think it matters whether there's a 3-2 vote that supports that or not. I think it's our city attorney representing us in this matter. I have a lot more faith in that than anything else. So that's all I want to say, Mayor. Thank you.
Well, again, I just want to make it clear that the way I will support that is the local funding agreement. It says it very clear that it will be no CO issued to this project unless MERS is completed, and I will stick to that.
I agree, Mayor.
We need a motion on this item, please.
Public, Mayor, public discussion.
Oh, yes, you're absolutely correct. We need to do that. Ms. Jacobs, have we received any emails?
No emails were received.
Okay. Is anyone online that wishes to speak? Mr. Jump?
If anyone would like to speak, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed in. We do not have any raised hands at this time, sir.
Okay. And the chair will entertain a motion.
Just to clarify with our city attorney, you want a motion to approve and then we vote it down? That's what's easiest for you?
Yeah, that's what your rules of procedure say. Under section 2-1517 paren A, it says all motions shall be set forth in the affirmative.
Okay,
So-
motion to approve.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Yes, Mayor. I second.
Okay, thank you. And roll call.
Commissioner Vaticiotis,
No.
Commissioner Donovan,
No.
Commissioner Terrapini,
No.
Vice Mayor Carr,
No.
Mayor LaHousas.
No. Mr. Trask,
Yes, sir.
I think you already know our feelings and the direction that we were giving you.
Yes, I'll work with the city manager and Mr. Robertson, and we'll see what we can do from here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now go to the ordinance and resolutions. Item number 9 is Resolution 2020-49. Ratification of executive orders. Mr. Attorney, if you please read the resolution.
Yes, Mayor. This is Resolution 2020-49, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Tarpon Springs, Florida, ratifying Executive Order 2020-26 and extending the declaration of local state of emergency to August 25th, 2020, and providing for an effective date hereof. That was the reading of Resolution 2020-49 by title only.
Thank you. Mr. Licorice, do you have any staff report?
No, it's just our normal seven-day extension because we did the previous 7 days at the special session.
Are there any commission comments on this item? Here none. Ms. Jacobs, have we received any emails?
No email.
Mr. Jump, do we have anyone that is wishing to speak on this item?
If anyone would like to speak, please raise your hand. We do not have any raised hands at this time, sir.
Thank you. And roll call.
Motion approved.
I need a motion
Second.
and roll call, please.
Commissioner Vaticiotis?
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr?
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas?
Yes, thank you. Next is item number 10, Resolution 2020-50, ratification of executive order regarding utility non-payment penalties, fines, and court enforcement compliance. Mr. Licorice? Or before we do that, I'd like to ask the city attorney to read the resolution.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Resolution 2020-50, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Tarpon Springs, Florida, ratifying Executive Order 2020-27, which reinstates utility non-payment, utility penalties, fines, and code enforcement board compliance provisions of the city code that were previously suspended pursuant to Executive Order 2020-02, as ratified by the Board of Commissioners in Resolution 2020-14, beginning October 1, 2020, and providing for an effective date. That was a reading of Resolution 2020-50 by title only.
Thank you. Mr. Licorice? Your staff
Yes,
report.
Yes, from the start of COVID, very proud of this commission, this city, for how we've handled it, for our businesses, for our residents. This was one of the measures that we took for our residents, as far as suspending the shutoffs, the penalties. Also, we were one of the last communities, I think in the last, one of the last agendas, I showed you the cities, and most of them are back to the way it was by September 1st, some even in July, the county in June, July, August, returning. By October 1, we're one of the latest returning. During that process, again, Ron Herring and especially Irene Jacobs in the clerk's office have been involved with notifying the public of where they could get resources, the county money, other resources to do that. As I told you at the last meeting, it's time to reinstate October 1. Irene's the architect of the document you had, the reinstatement plan. She, with only a little help from me and some Ron Herring, but she's the architect. You can see the efforts we're taking to get the information to our citizens, giving them recourse, giving them a plan for how they make up for the money they owe. I think she was very thorough, and this is as good of a reinstatement plan as I've seen from any of the cities and stuff. So I think we're taking every step possible for our citizens and reinstating this. And we seek approval. If you have questions about the reinstatement plan, I'm sure Irene can answer them, because she took a lot of time researching and again, being the architect of this, giving the full advantage to the citizens to have the knowledge of what's going on and how they can possibly get help during this crisis.
Mr. Licorice, I got additional information on that. I had my monthly meeting with the County Commissioner David Eggers and the mayors of North Pinellas. One of the things we talked about was the Pinellas Cares program, which providing financial assistance to individuals nonprofit organizations and local business, providing local business grants. The information that I was able to get, the Pinellas County have received $49.4 million from the federal government for this program. And up to this day, they spent $16.1 million. They still have $33 million left to help the people of Pinellas County, of course, including Tarpon Springs. And they're getting ready now to send information out to provide the local business grants. And but they're in process of doing the individual finance assistance and also for nonprofits. So it's just a matter of calling or going to the website and apply for it, or call 727-464-3000, 727-464-3000. Or if they just call the number 211, they should be able to get that information and apply for those grants, for that finance assistance. So the money's there. It's just a matter of applying for it. Are there any commission comments on this item?
Mayor,
No.
I have one. I just, I'm sure the counseling efforts, or at least the communication of that information that you just said, is going to be, other than announcing it tonight, is going to be shared with the public, and City Manager LaCourse or City Clerk Jacobs. That's accurate. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure that. Thank you very much. That's it, man.
Well, that can actually validate it by going to the website, and they can see if they're eligible for the finance assistance. Any other commission comments? We'll go to the public comments then. Ms. Jacobs, have we received any emails?
No emails are received.
Mr. Jamp, do we have any attendees wishing to speak on this item?
If anyone would like to speak, please raise your hand. And we do not have any raised hands at this time.
Need a motion?
So moved.
Motion to approve. Second.
And roll call, please.
Commissioner Vaticiotis,
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan,
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini, Vice
Yes.
Mayor Carr,
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas.
Yes, thank you. Item number 11 was deferred, so we go to item number 12, miscellaneous, which is the state appropriations. Mr. Licouris?
Yes, from a previous meeting, you were asked to bring back items that were ready to go forward, to ask for state appropriations. Mr. Robertson gave you a memorandum that has 3 of those projects. Obviously, you know, we've talked about for a long time, the number one is the Sponge Dock flooding abatement system. So the other 2 are the MLK South Springs abatement and reconfiguration roundabout, and the Mango Street improvements phase 2. As you know, we're going to be starting on the phase 1, but due to the cost of phase 2, we don't have the funding for it yet. So those are the 3 project ready and with enough information. Remember, we have to have enough information to bring forward to get the legislative representatives to move it forward. These are 3 that we have. So per the meeting where you asked for this, these are back to you for your consideration of putting the packets together, getting them to the right people, and getting them to the mayor to go to Tallahassee as he's promised to do, and to go lobby to try to get us money that hopefully something won't happen to at the last minute, like some of our previous ones.
Well, I'm ready to go to Tallahassee. Are there any commission comments?
I've got
Vice Mayor Carr?
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to say thanks to the staff. I feel like this is an important effort to do each year. regardless if the state moves forward with them or not. I think it's good to be in front of the state regularly. They're divvying out or dishing out money each year to different municipalities and local governments. So I think Tarpon should be there every year asking for something. I think these are all three worthy projects to ask the state for funding for. The first two address flooding and stormwater issues, and then the second one addresses connectivity to two U.S. highways. So I think these are all valid projects to request. They're all, I guess they all interact with transportation too, to an extent as well, in these areas. So I just want to say thanks again for staff coming back from the direction from the board. Thanks.
Commissioner Terrapini, any comments?
No, sir.
Commissioner Donovan?
Just a thank you to staff.
Commissioner Vaticiotis?
I do have a couple of questions. Mayor, are we going to vote on all three of these as a package or break them out individually?
Right, as a package would be okay, if we all agree with that.
Good with that.
I'll support it for unanimity of the commission, both this item and the next one, but I do have some questions for, actually it's information for the commission. That MLK and South Spring flooding abatement project. Mr. Robertson, I spoke about this a little bit this morning as well, and he provided me the report that Cardinal did from back in November of 2019, so I appreciated that information, which gave a little bit of the background. I noticed in the, and maybe it's more of a question, I'm not sure how this appropriations works. On the proposed state request for construction, we're showing $473,600. Is that, does that include the 127,000 or is it separate from that?
Separate.
Okay.
The 127,000 would be our match.
Okay, so does this information go to the, does the information or how we come up with these costs go to the state as part of the application?
Yes, they've got an application that you fill out. I think in one of the past backups, we gave you an example of what we did last year for the Sponge Docks flooding abatement one. So you could see what has to be filled out for all these things to go forward. So
I do want to point out that the construction estimate of 473,000 in that report that was done by Cardinal for the total cost, the construction part of it is actually 372,000, not 500,000. The total cost of the project, which includes the design work, is 473,619. Is that going to make a difference?
we'll look at that and before we do the documents and stuff. I'll get with Mr. Robertson and we'll double check that.
My point is, whatever we represent to our elected officials, I'd like for it to be accurate.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The other part I wish to point out to the commission, which is the part I'm having an extreme problem with on this turning signal, we're pitching it as flooding abatement, and yet in the cost estimate for this, out of the 473,000, we're showing a $50,000 is what the expected cost is for flooding, flood control. And it's just a wedge number. And I guess how much work have we done in that area? Can somebody answer that? City manager, of course, is Mr. Robertson still there? Or?
No, I don't think Mr. Robertson's still on.
Okay.
I tried to flip and look and see, I didn't see him on.
All right. Well, we're just showing this as $50,000. My suspicion it's going to cost a lot more. The proposal, actually alternative 2 is what we're looking at, raises that elevation of the road by 1.5 feet. And I also want to point out to the commission what we're submitting still does not have a pedestrian sidewalk or a bicycle path on the west side of this turning circle. So that's not even shown in the depiction. That's going to be an additional cost to what we've already shown if we're planning on establishing a pedestrian or bicycle trail. And I guess my last question is, what happens if if the state approved it, let's say they don't approve which I hope they do, the one at the sponge docks. But what happens if they approve this one or approve all three of them? They approve this one, and for whatever reason, it's determined that it's infeasible for a variety of physical constraints, or perhaps the residents don't want it. We're not really even at first base on this project, other than having produced a report and discussed it twice, I think, since November. What happens if that funding is appropriated and for some other reason we're painted ourselves in the corner that we've got funding, but the residents or some other reason doesn't want it? How does that work?
Well, again, that would be an issue. That would be an issue of credibility with our people who fight for what we want. So that could be an issue.
All right. Well, for I've been a city manager of the course's shoes before, and I assure you that the credibility of the city is paramount when it comes to representing things to our state officials as far as accuracy. And if the funding is obtained, we follow through with it. And you heard some of the discussion I had last night. I suspect you've seen my memorandum from this morning. I'm going to support this appropriations things for unanimity of the city, but I have very little confidence that it's going to turn out the way we're depicting it right now, even to the extent that it may not even be feasible. I still have the same issues that I did last night. I shared those with Mr. Robertson, and he confirmed very little work, if anything, has been done in those particular areas, other than there was a cost estimate developed. And in looking at that, all we're doing is putting a funding wedge of $50,000 for flood control. We have no idea of how we're going to do the flooding. All I do know is, as I stated last night, is the turning circle is going to be 1.5 feet higher than what that intersection is right now. And my initial comments that I had last time, unless that is addressed down away from the turning circle, we're going to be pushing stormwater towards the residences along MLK, Pineapple, as well as South Spring Boulevard. So I did not show you my markup of the $100,000 or $94,000 proposal that Mr. Robertson through Cardinal had provided for some preliminary design work for the Spring Boulevard riprap project, but I had in bold caps in there that haste makes waste, and that we need to do it right if we do it at all. So I appreciate what the commission wants to do, pursue this thing in haste. I think it's at this point, it's particularly premature with the work that we've done, especially with the elements that are missing from it, that our primary objective is for the pedestrian bicycle path. But I don't want to take any more of your time, and I suspect it's going to pass, but I'm just, for the record, I'm throwing an air of caution to all of you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other commission comments? If not, we'll go into the public comments.
Yeah, I have a comment, Mayor. I guess I'm just confused. And I guess it's more of a question for Commissioner Vaticiotis. So are you advocating that we ask for less money from the state?
No, well, right now, the numbers that you're shown in your memorandum aren't even accurate. My feeling is that we don't know anything about the flood control. And don't get me wrong, it's important that it be cured. That's not even an issue with me. It's not what we want to do, it's how we're going about it. And I think there's some basic engineering procedures that you follow that are somewhat sequential. And we're really putting the cart before the horse. And I think that what's driving this is this desire for a roundabout more than the flooding, which at least that's the impression I've gotten. And there's nothing wrong with that as well, as long as the flooding is done. What I'm saying is that all we're showing right now for flooding, the cost of flooding is $50,000 out of the construction cost of 360 something. So that's 1/6 of the total for flooding, yet we're pitching it as a flooding abatement. Now, I'm glad it's the mayor defending this and not me in Tallahassee, because they've got some pretty sharp people up there that are going to be looking at that. And the answer is yes. If it costs more, let's do it right. If it's 200, 300, 400,000 for the flooding, let's do it right. All I'm suggesting right now for $50,000, I don't think you're going to get much out of that. Anyway, I hope that answers your question.
Okay. I mean, from my perspective, staff has assured us that it would relieve flooding in the area. And I think it's more around the basis of relieving flooding than it is the roundabout.
You know, Commissioner Donovan, why don't you ask the city manager point blank if he's ready to confirm that this evening?
I mean, I don't have to ask the city manager. Our city engineer discussed it with us last night.
He's not on board. I've had that conversation. He's not ready to do that. He doesn't know how to do it at this point. That hasn't been fleshed out. He's just, there is, if you look at the project cost estimate, there's a number of details in there. And what he described to me was, would do these with some at grade drains and things of that nature, but those are not in the cost estimate. Other things are, like the turning circle, the dimensions and the cost based on unit price and the whole thing, but those are not in there for flooding because we don't even have the topography on South Spring Boulevard to make that call. Now, I guess you can interpret this that we can cure the flooding at that intersection by raising the turning circle 1.5 feet. And it is cured when we push the water towards the residences, but then that would be a separate project to fix that. And that's not even looked at right now because we don't even have the topography on it. Again, I've looked at this report this morning and you know, Commissioner Donovan, all I'm going to tell you is what I just said. I don't have anything else to offer you. If you want to believe the staff, and I told you what I've discussed with them, and the city manager sitting right there, and you don't want to ask him, that's fine. And I already said I'm going to support the measure for unanimity, but from a practical and a realistic perspective, I think there's an extreme high risk to this project at this point, not because of what it wants to do, but how we're approaching it and what we know about it at this point. I think the numbers are real soft. When you've got, what was it, 347,000 for putting in 2 turn lanes on Mears, that was 347,000. And here we're showing 372,000 construction costs for an entire roundabout, which takes into account flooding that we don't know anything about yet. It doesn't take an engineer to figure that may not be copacetic in terms of comparing the two. There's something wrong there. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
I mean, if you think it's going to cost more, then I would think we would want as much help from the state as we could.
Yes, and I don't mind if it does cost more. I just want some realistic number. You look at what we're doing with the Dodecanese, $1.7 million. I haven't even blinked an eye on that. I have no problem with that if that's what it does to cure the problem. On this particular case, I think it's going to be more than some in-ground grates. There's nothing, unless you want to say, okay, maybe flapper valves there, but you know, flapper valves haven't really worked out real well for us on the sponge docks yet. So there's no other provision for removing that flooding. And as the mayor, I believe, said last night, it's not just rainwater, it's a combination of high tide and rainwater. So that rainwater with that ground grates is not going to go away unless the tide, except then after the tide recedes, and then it'll drain into the bayou. And right now, and I don't particularly think that's a solution, I guess is what I'm getting at. And the other part of this, I would have liked to seen a bike path that was brought up last time, or some provision for a sidewalk on the west side of this. It's not in there. So that's going to be an additional cost any way you look at it. And I prefer the state to pay for that than what we pay. We would wind up paying for it as part of the Spring Boulevard, South Spring Boulevard riprap rehab. So, I mean, I could continue on with this thing, but it quite frankly, I don't want to waste any more of your time on this. So,
Okay. Commissioner Donovan, do you have any other questions?
Good.
Okay. Any other commission comments on this item? If not, we're going to go to the public comments. Ms. Jacobs, have we received any emails?
No emails.
Mr. Jump, do we have anyone wishing to speak on this item?
If anyone would like to speak, please raise your hand. And we have no raised hands at this time, sir.
Okay, thank you. Before I entertain a motion, I'd like to ask Mr. Licorice again, are you comfortable with the numbers that you have on this project?
Well, as I've said all along, the number one priority is the sponge docks abatement one. And, you know, I've always felt it's been my position that that's the one we should go full forward with. As far as the one that came up, we approved last night, when we do that engineering work to enhance that and get that, then I'll be comfortable when I see that additional work that you put in the budget the other night. You know, we do have a plan and we do have a look, but I agree. I'd be more comfortable when I see that that further engineering that you placed in the budget last night done. So, but again, you know, it's an item that would be ready to go forward if you want to do it. Again, my feeling all along is that everything we should put in should be towards getting money from the state for the sponge docks system.
So are you saying that you're not totally comfortable with the numbers that we already have on there now, or no?
I'm not saying, I mean,
I'm trying to get a feeling about what.
Again, I'm comfortable with what that document was supposed to supply. Supply is not the end thing of the design of the roundabout and what actually we need. I'd be more comfortable if I had that document, but you know, the information we have is the information we have.
Okay.
Mayor, may I add something? If we were to break out these projects, I can tell you, I would not support the MLK turnabout. Let me just.
We
leave it.
understand that.
But
We've got,
because
that's
they're all-
clear.
They're all packaged together. I'm going to support all three of them.
Okay. Thank you. I need a motion for this item, please.
A motion to approve.
Second.
In roll call.
Commissioner Vaticiotis?
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr?
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas?
Yes, thank you. Next is item number 13, letter of support, grant applications for Rebuild Florida program. Staff report.
This was also something you asked to be brought back. Mr. Smith worked on it very hard to have a letter from you with all your signatures. The suggestion is that we have probably 10 of the signature places signed for all of you, and then your direction of everyone that you want it sent to. So there's your documents are there with the signature sheets that you asked to be brought back to support those different grants that we've put in for.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Smith called me and we discussed that. I am good with that. And also I recommended that we send this letter to state representatives, all the state representatives that we have. And also I suggested that we send it to our congressman as well, even though that this is for the state, because we can use him as an influence for this project. Vice Mayor Carr?
Yeah,
Vice Mayor
I'm in
Carr?
support of this. I think that's a good idea. I mean, I say let's go ahead and send it to our senators too. I'm not sure if they're liked or not, but I know they all spent time in Tallahassee before they were elected as senators. So I think it would be a good idea to include them as well.
Okay.
When I met with Senator Scott, he actually told me there's not a whole lot that he can do from a budget standpoint in the federal government, but he said for any grants that he's happy to reach out on our behalf and lobby or at least vocalize his support for it when I was up in DC. So
It doesn't hurt.
right.
Thank you. Commissioner Terrapini?
I support both letters, Mayor. Thank you.
Commissioner Donovan?
I support both letters. Happy to ask for as much money as we can get.
Commissioner Vaticius.
Mayor, it's one letter, right, with all of our signatures?
There was 2 letters. The other one's for the hospital.
Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, I understand that. No, there's no problem. I'd like to have unanimity when we're representing the city to the state. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Public comments, Ms. Jacobs? Any
No.
emails on this item?
No emails were received.
Mark, do we have anyone that's wishing to speak on this item?
If anyone would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. We do not have any raised hands at this time, sir.
We need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Vaticiotis,
Yes.
Commissioner Donovan,
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Carr,
Yes.
Mayor LaHousas.
Yes. Number 14 is a discussion. Naming of mayors. Mr. Licouris?
Yes, this is something multiple BOC members have asked to bring to the agenda. It's something that's been talked about for the longest time, as far as I can remember. So the issues are, and let me tell you pretty much what I thought the intent was. Obviously, this board can go whichever way they want, but the intention for a long time was to eventually make the Mears corridor going all the way from Florida Avenue, alternate 19 and 19, to be Mears, and it's been talked about for many years. Respect to Dr. Diamandis, who I was sitting in the chief spot when he would come up, and his passion for transportation and wanted that road to go through. And it's been said way back that there would be a highway designation, that there would be some kind of memorial plaque and a designation memorial highway type thing. And Renee's going to go through some slides she made of this thing to make it a little more clearer of some different types you could do. But the decisions you have is of course, the Mango Street, which goes from Distant to 19, is that going to be changed consistent to Mears? I don't believe any addresses on there is going to affect. So you have a Mears corridor going through. I know you've got some discussion and at least one letter from some residents that would like it to stay Mango. And then of course, your different options for how you want to honor Dr. Diamandis, which we have some illustrations on. Renee, you want to share and put those up on the screen so we can see the different
Sure.
slides you
Let me see
made
if
to
I
help
can
out?
share my screen. Actually, yeah, I'm unmuted. Oh. Okay. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So make sure I'm on the first slide here.
Yes, you are.
All right. Sorry, I'm fighting with my PowerPoint and I have an unstable internet connection, it just told me. So just to frame the conversation, obviously, the existing Mears Boulevard segment, the unnamed Mears Boulevard extension, and then this is the Mango Street corridor. Sorry, I'm pointing at the wrong thing again. The only potentially affected property owner or that might have, if you change the Mango segment to Mears or some other name, this property I initially identified may have been addressed as 802 Mango Street, but in talking with Shane and finance on addressing, this has been changed to 906, 908, and 910 Mango Loop. And so if you actually drive out there, you'll see that there's a road sign now for this. And this is the old Sunrise Place of Volunteers of America apartments. So that's really the only thing that it would be affected by an actual name change if you do decide to go that route. Obviously, if you're looking at keeping Mango, keeping Mears, and maybe naming this, that's problematic, for 911 and safety purposes and addressing and all kinds of things. So, your options really, you've already talked about them, so I don't really need to belabor that. Some other memorial or honorary options, I pulled some examples of sign types that might be appropriate. It can be a memorial, roadway sign, something that's freestanding or in conjunction with your actual, approved state, approved road name, or a memorial plaque. So those are really the options that I found. And so I'll just stop there, and that should frame the discussion for you.
Thank you, Ms. Vincent.
Do you want me to unshare?
Yeah, yes, if you would.
Okay.
Thank you. I am in support to have some kind of a memorial sign for Dr. D. Not only that he was an excellent person, but he always cared for the Mears Boulevard to open all the way to US 19. I spoke to one of the residents, which she sent a letter for commission to be read for the meeting. But she's concerned about, she wants to keep the name the way it is, the Mango Street. Before we do any discussion, I would like to ask if I ask Ms. Jacobs to read the letter.
The letter is dated August 24th from Annie Dabbs of 803 South Diston Avenue. Dear Mayor Alahouzes, in the area south of Mango Street are two housing subdivisions, Mango Circle and Mango Loop. There's a church in Mango Circle. It was built in the early 60s before the Housing Authority built their apartments. The church, Oak Hill Church of God in Christ, was built on land owned by the founder of the church, Elder W.H. Wright. The land was filled with mango trees, a tropical cultivated
Ms. Jacobs. Ms. Jacobs, your internet connection.
I'm happy to read it, Mayor. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, okay.
This first sentence again is, in the area of South Mango Street are two housing subdivisions, Mango Circle and Mango Loop. There's a church in Mango Circle. It was built in the early 60s before the Housing Authority built their apartments. The church, Oak Hill Church of God in Christ, was built on the land owned by the founder of the church, Elder W.H. Wright. The land was filled with mango trees, a tropical tree cultivated in India, and now its farming has been extended worldwide. I mention the name Mango because it is an important part of the history of the neighborhood. Mango Street is the gateway to Mango Circle, Mango Loop, and a house of worship. Mango Street is important for the preservation because it provided a road to decent and affordable housing for the residents of Tarpon Springs and a house of worship. I understand the historic preservation strengthens neighborhoods and uncovers and memorializes the stories of communities through the voices that built them. It's no secret that the voices most at risk from, I'm not sure what that word is, assured by the passage of time are the voices of the unrepresented. Preservation, the visual landscape contributes to the quality of life. It is the work of historic preservation to protect our voices and collective stories. I recommend the name of Mango Street remains the same as the city protects our history, and that is from Annie Dabbs, not from myself. And she's at 803 South Diston in Tarpon Springs.
Okay. I think before we decide what the name should be, I think we should have a town hall meeting so we can get the input from the residents. Obviously, now we got the input from Mrs. Dabbs, and she says she spoke to the neighbors there, but I think it's good if we hear from the people too. Vice Mayor Carr, what's your take on that?
I'm for hearing what the residents say, but to me, I'm not a fan of having a street with multiple names on it. I do feel that Mears should be the name from Florida Avenue to US 19. with Miss Dabbs, I think it's important to point out that she brought out that Mango Loop and Mango Circle are still going to be Mango. And then there's some great honorary examples I think that staff has provided. I like the one particularly where the Michigan Ave is, where it has something under the name of Brother John Michael Way. And it could be something along the lines of that. It's a way to honor Dr. Is it Diamandis? Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then
Dr.
also
D.
Dr. D. And
Yeah.
also give some homage to Mango Street as well. So it could be like a double sign below it saying Mears, and then it could be formally known as Historic Mango Street. And I mean, I'm always for putting these fun-looking signs like that Blue Star Memorial Highway sign somewhere on the roads. I think those attract attention and always are good for a good read for people in Tarpon Springs and also visitors. But I think that would be a great way to, is what it sounds like, the community wants to recognize the history of Mango and also recognize the a strong individual in Tarpon Springs that pushed for modernization and connectivity for our streets and roadways. But to summarize, I think Mears makes sense to go all the way through, but it's still good to recognize both of them in this.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yeah, in short, I basically agree with the Vice Mayor that I think I'd like to see Mears Boulevard go from Florida Avenue all the way to US 19. I definitely think, I didn't know Dr. D, and I've heard former Commissioner Delacus talk about this often. I haven't really heard anybody else speak of it, but I do know that he did come to the commission meetings, and I know that it was a thing regarding his push for Mears Boulevard. So I'm happy to honor him in some kind of a way with some kind of a memorial sign. And then likewise for the Union Academy neighborhood, specifically Mango Street and the Circle and the church. So if we can give some kind of a acknowledgement to both parties formally with some signage, I'm good with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Donovan?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Obviously, I didn't know Dr. Diamandis, but happy to honor him in any way we can. I would recommend that we put in some type of memorial sign. One of the ones on a PowerPoint slide should do the trick, just to commend and honor him for his initial suggestions and pushing for this. But as far as the actual street names go themselves, I'm happy to leave it kind of the way it is presented on the map with Mears and Mango Street remaining.
Okay. Commissioner Matikotis?
Mayor and Commissioners, I'm sorry, I lost connection, but I'm on the phone.
I hear you.
That's okay. Thank you, Irene.
Mayor, I've got some fairly strong feelings from a historical perspective. I knew Dr. Diamandis, as many of us did, very personally. And his interest was to put the Mears Boulevard through. But I don't know that he would have actually gotten involved in what do you name the second part of that. I don't know that he would have had a preference on that one way or the other, but I know him and I knew him, and I know for a fact he would not wanted to rub anybody wrong because of putting this road through in that regard. I don't have an issue with keeping the names as they are, Mango Street and Mears. I think that I've spoken to Mrs. Dabbs about this as well personally some time ago, and there is some, hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. There's really some historical context there, and I think we've had some discussions of how some of the history in the Union Academy neighborhood is disappearing. Vice Mayor Carr, I think this is one of those intersections that you called for a turning roundabout, right? Diston and Mears. Wasn't this those that you talked about, or?
Diston and MLK was one of them I talked about.
Right, which is this intersection, I believe.
It's the next street up, but.
Okay, anyway, my feeling is I don't have an issue with the street being, having two names like that, just to maintain the historical aspect of it. On the other hand, if the residents feel otherwise, as you described, Mayor Alahousas, I think that we would defer to them. I don't know. There is no good way of going by this. I mean, but for me, our city is made up of people, and the Union Academy neighborhood is part of that people. And I simply want to honor them and not lose anything. We've gone through and followed through on a design that Dr. Diamandis and many other people, the Sally family had the same interest of getting Mears Boulevard through there as well. So I think it's good that we're putting the street through. I just don't want to create or hurt anybody's feelings in that regard. So I think from Commissioner Donovan's observation, he and I are along the same lines. I believe that's the same reason of why he would like to keep it that way. But then again, if the commission feels it needs to be turned over to the commission, to the residents for decision, that's fine too.
Yeah, I still think it's a good idea to get the input from the residents there, and see what kind of input they will give us. I think they're going to live in the area, so it's good to have their opinion.
Well, again, Mayor, this is a discussion. We would bring it. Please don't say another town hall meeting, because I'm trying to work on a schedule with about 10 of them that I'm going to be talking to you about and getting there. So we'd be glad to agenda it on an agenda many times to get their input and things, but we're a little stacked on town hall meetings.
Being it's just a discussion, we'd need to take a vote at another meeting to begin with. Is that correct?
This is just a break. Yeah.
Right.
This is actually the first time we're talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
There is a formal process, if you're going to rename the street that we have to go through. So that, that does require notice and input and everything like that. So
that was the question I was going to ask. What's the process in case we have to change it?
It falls under Article 10 of the Code of Ordinances, and it spells out, if you're going to change the name of a facility, first you do have to investigate the existing name and is there historical significance to it. You need to know, just that's part of the ordinance that says we have to do that. We have to notify property owners, and when notify them of when action will be discussed by the board so that they have a chance to appear. So we can do some pre-work and maybe see if there's a way that we can reach out to the community, and just get their feelings on this up before we go any further.
I think it's a good idea.
Mayor, may I just offer another comment or two? When we reach out to the community, we need to be very careful with this as well. I don't want to create an issue over this either. So there's got to be some sensitivity in this, and as far as how we do this. So I think that there's got to be some work on that part and some thought process put into it before we just turn ourselves loose and start asking residents what would they like to see in a name. And I'm not sure how to do that, I guess is what I'm getting at. But I do know that we need to be very careful that we don't wind up, as I said, hurting people's feelings or creating some kind of an issue over this when there really isn't any. So, and also I didn't say about Dr. Diamandis's memorial, but I think a plaque similar to the Blue Star Highway plaque would be fitting as well. And I'm not sure of the location, but certainly someplace perhaps at the trail and Mears, because that's where the new section started. At least that's the part that he used to look at, was at the intersection of Safford Avenue and Mears. He would always look down that wetlands down there saying, this is where we need to go through. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Well, if we have no more comments, any other comments before we adjourn this meeting? No? Well, that concludes the regular session meeting. It's adjourned at, wait a minute, before I do that, do we have any staff comments?
No comments, Mayor. Thank you.
Just
City
one
Attorney,
minute.
City Attorney, any comments?
No, sir. Thank you.
City Manager?
Yeah, so I can finalize the meet, if I would ask the board to send me any time off that they might have from now through the end of the year. I'm trying to get the schedule of different nights to schedule some of these meetings that we have. I've got the nights identified, but I know I've got a school schedule. If there's anything like school on a night, or if you know you have a vacation planned or some time you're going to be away, if you could get it to me sometime this week or early next, and then I'll have a schedule with you of some available days and some different meetings that we have to have so we can discuss further. So again, try to get that to me by the end of the week or beginning next week, any time from now to the end of the year where you may have off, or any nights during that period where you may have a conflict. That's all.
Okay. Ms. Jacobs?
No comment. Sorry, I lost my internet.
That's not your fault. Vice Mayor Carr?
I don't have any comments. Thank you.
Commissioner Terrapini?
No comments, Mayor.
Commissioner Donovan?
I'm good, Mayor. Thank you.
Commissioner Tikiotis?
Same, thank you, Mayor.
I don't have any comments either, so that concludes the regular session meeting, and it's adjourned at 8:19 p.m.
Good night.
Good night.